Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Starting After series. I know I've been counting this down on my various social media outlets. I've been telling friends and family, it's coming, it's coming. The book is coming, the podcast is coming, the YouTube series is coming, it's all coming. And now it is finally here. Episode 1, Part 1 of the Starting After series. And I am just Johnda, and I am so excited to share this next part of my journey, my autobiography, and hopefully yours in telling the amazing stories and sharing the amazing stories, the good, the great, the bad, the ugly, the happy, the sad, all of those things that are a part of our journey to starting after. So we're going to start with a couple of things that people always ask me, right? They go, oh, just Johnda. Is that because she's an attorney? So justice, all of that. Is she judging us? What does that mean? No, it's literally, as it said, sometimes things are just that simple. It's just Johnda. I am just Johnda from Trenton, New Jersey. I am just Johnda who has been through some of the many things in life that we're going to talk about that some of you are going to say, what? What on earth is she saying? And why is she telling us that? I'm just Johnda. That's what I do. I like to tell people stories. I am just Johnda, who is a mother and wife and attorney and all of those things. I am just Johnda, who is a proud daughter and granddaughter and niece and all of those things. And I am just Johnda, who is going to share the life that I'm living and telling my story. I'm just Johnda who just hiccuped while I'm telling you that. That's me. Starting after, another thing. It is a concept that if you have ever heard me speak, if you have ever gone to anything I've ever been to, or even had a conversation with me, at least over the past 10, 15 years or so, you've heard me mention it. And I've said things about starting after, and I've especially said things about starting after in relation to starting over. And I've said, I'm going to put this out there because we need to talk about it and why we start after and what that means and how important it is that we all do it. So let me dispel something for you all. And I may have people who don't like it, don't like hearing it. Whenever something happens, what is the first thing people say? Oh, you can always start over. No, you can't. When I was sick, people said, oh, you can always start over. When I lost a child, oh, you can always start over. You're going to start over. No, you can't. You can't. When I had to close my law firm, I was not years later going to be starting over as if I did not have all of the slings and arrows of life that came along with it, all of the baggage. And not all of that baggage is bad, but it's still stuff. Not the same person in her 20s. I'm not the same person who didn't have student loans or don't have bills or just all of the stuff that comes along with it, or not, or even the happy times that have made me who I am. Not starting over from not having children with extracurricular activities or being a member of different organizations. No, so I can't start over because all of those things already exist. But what I can do, what we all can do when things happen, is we can start after. And that is fine. You know why? Because you just have to do it. Every day when I tell my story, and people say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you've been through this or that. Oh, you must be so strong and all of those things. It is Trust me, I appreciate all of those wonderful things that people say. I do. But I also say, with love, not really. Not so strong. Didn't feel it. Not so, not this amazing person. I cry. I sit in my closet. I do all of those things. When I had cancer, there were times when I felt so sick and the chemo was so, ooh, all of that. Literally, the only thing that would bring me some semblance of relief was lying on my bathroom floor to feel the cold linoleum up against my face. And mind you, I didn't give a damn whether that floor was clean, dirty, or who had been in there before me. And if you live with men, okay, we're gonna leave that alone, but you already know. But I needed that moment of relief. So strong, maybe. Survive, maybe. Thrive, not all the time. But still here, still starting after, and still wanting to share my stories and so many others. And yes, it has been many years of me talking about that and talking about this. So why now? Well, why the freak not? Right? When are you going to do it? Why not? Guess what we're doing every single day? Guess what I'm doing? And trust me, you are literally doing the exact same thing. You know the thing that we have in common every day is our autobiography is being written every single day. We are actively living it. Now, whether or not we choose to commit pen to paper or do a podcast or any of these other things that everybody is doing, doesn't matter. But the story is still occurring every single day. So had I done it umpteen years ago or doing it now, guess what? My story is still evolving. And maybe, just maybe, it was meant to start today. And I kind of think it did. Even last year, when I made the commitment to myself that 2024, it is going to happen. I am going to get that book out. I still have the rest of the year, guys. I'm going to get that book out. I am going to talk more openly about this, and I'm going to bring other people into this story, into this circle. And we are going to share it with everybody. We are going to create this community, this movement. When I said those things, and I was writing notes and writing little mini scripts, because you gotta, even for yourself, you gotta script something, right? So even when I was saying all of those things, sorry, I had to look down for a second for those who are watching this on YouTube, because I'm starting it up on the podcast as well. So even though I said all of those things, there was something, it was just like this roadblock. Let's face it, it wasn't a real roadblock, right? But it was something that kept saying, it's going to happen, Johnda. You're going to do it. But I just kept pushing the date. And I would get all the graphics and everything ready, and then I would just push the date. And it was literally within the past 3 or 4 weeks that it dawned on me that part of this starting after, part of me deciding that today, April 28th, 2024, was going to be that date when it all really came together, one way or the other, was because it was a special day. It was a special birthday. It is a day that even if no one else remembers, I do, because it's important. And why is this day important to me? It's because it's Jared's birthday. My son Jared, who I credit with my beginning of starting after, even when I didn't know it, even when it plunged me into the depths of despair, unlike anything that I've ever known and will hopefully never know again. Unbeknownst to me and to this precious little being, it was the beginning of starting after for me. So I'm going to take us back a bit because I think it's important when you are sharing your story to bear it and share it. And for some, this may not be the easiest story to hear. So, trigger warning, especially for mothers. My son Jared Avery was born on April 28th, 2005. He was a baby that was loved beyond measure before he got here. One of the people who loved him most, if possible, even more than me, was his older brother, Jordan, my son, who at the time was a very precocious, talkative, active 5-year-old, still precocious and talkative. And boy, did he want a little brother. For those of you who, or he just wanted a sibling, really. And for those of you who have younger children, you know there's a certain point, especially when they are in nursery school, kindergarten, all those years, everybody's mommies are having babies. And quite frankly, especially in those younger grades, most of their teachers are pregnant all the time, too. So here it is. I'm the mom who was pretty delighted with my child being an only child, even if he wasn't. And the year before, we had a pregnancy that didn't go beyond a few months. And it was one of those things where I still say that God has a way of showing you what you want even if you think you don't want it. And sometimes it is in a way that, whoo, and, and that pregnancy was called a blighted ovum pregnancy. So also odd, okay, was something that I didn't see coming, nor the loss or that hole that it left in me, and realizing that that also showed a hole in my little family at the time. And as someone who had struggled with fertility issues, that was already a surprise on many fronts. Because my babies are miracle babies, so to speak. My oldest, Jordan, was, and Jared, and now my youngest. And so we began a fertility journey, and it wasn't an extreme one at that time. They felt that just some medications would do it, and it actually did. So I became pregnant with this baby who was wanted by everyone, including this elated, incredible 5-year-old who had already vowed, and I had no doubt was going to be the best big brother in the world. And so the morning of April 28th started similar to many days, and then took a left at not so much. I was awakened, as I often am, by my husband leaving for work. We're in the area we live in. Somebody's got to go in early so that somebody could do the banker's hours, and we navigate how the daycare and everything's going to work in between. So he's the early one. And of course, me being a light sleeper woke me up as it always does. I turn over, very pregnant, but already with a planned birth. That was going to be at the end of May. But this time I couldn't just turn over and go to sleep. I was feeling just not so great, just achy. And I can't explain it, but it didn't feel good. And it was enough that I knew to make some phone calls. And it's 6 o'clock in the morning. So who do I call? Do I call a doctor? Of course not. I called my grandmother. One of my besties, my grandmother Helen, who thankfully even then and now is still with us and still can be called on the phone for some good or little out there homespun advice. But this time, shockingly, there was no random homespun remedy. She actually said something that I was a bit surprised about. And if you've met my grandmother, as a lot of grandmothers, native southerner, all of those things, you might be surprised too. I said, Mom, I'm not feeling so good. I'm feeling achy. This is what happened. This is what I'm feeling. And so she says, call your doctor. What? Call my doctor? Not that I'm opposed with calling a doctor. I just expected something a little more sassy. I don't know. So I did. I called I called the health advice line, whatever. And they were great. Again, everybody's giving me advice that's sound. I really don't know what I was expecting for them to tell me to take some Tylenol and a Coke. I don't know. And they said, go to the hospital. Just one of our docs is on duty there. He had some, births overnight. So you'll get seen by one of us. Just go to the hospital, and if it's all good, no biggie. First child was early. This is not unusual for someone like you. Okay, no biggie. And I was, how old was I then? In my early 30s, I believe I was 33, maybe. Yeah, so about 33. So, at that point, they're treating you like you are 95 having a baby. So maybe that was part of it as well. So, no problem. I then call a close friend who is like a consummate auntie to my children. She also had a key to the house. So I called her, told her what was going on. Her mom's a nurse. She got her on the line, and said the same thing. I mean, just go to the hospital. And at this point, it's feeling crampy. So I wake my son up. I tell my girlfriend, Kisa, I tell her, hey, do what you would in any other circumstance. Come on to the house, let yourself in. I'll have Shorty downstairs. He'll starting breakfast, and because I'm still thinking I'm running the show at this point, right? I am still thinking you're going to come, you're going to let yourself in, you're going to make sure that Jordan's all cleaned up. We're going to go to the hospital. Al's going to meet us there. We're going to drop him off at the hospital. I'm sorry, drop him off at school. Like all of these things are going to happen like clockwork. And this is before things were really kicked in hard with you better keep your cell phone on. No, my husband, like typical guys, the phone is kind of on, but he's not really paying attention to it. He's on the highway trying to fight traffic getting to work. So left that part out, did try to call. At any rate, she's trying to call as well. Then things change. I go down the hall, I wake up my son, give him his morning routine. It's all written down. It's kind of how we did things. And he knows, check off your list. I go in the bathroom, I wash up, I do these things, and I go downstairs and we move on. I'm sorry you see my hand there. I'm recording at least this episode in my office in the midst of mommy duties, but it was just really important to me that I did this today. So impacting my technology a bit. At any rate, I woke him up, get him started, gets washed up and dressed, heading down to breakfast, and that's all I remember. No matter how many times I rack my brain, that's all I remember. I was journaling during that time, and I still do, just not always quite as religious about it. And even through my journals, that's all I remember. The next thing I know, Kisa is calling my name, and I'm at the top of the stairs, but I'm not standing. And at that point, I am attempting, I guess I was attempting to kind of crawl maybe down the stairs. I don't know. But that's the next thing I remember. And we get outside. And at that point, she tells me she's reached my husband. And my son and I were going to the car. And I don't know how, but he's pulling up. And probably because at that point he was going against traffic. When you live in a metro area, you get that. And somehow they got me into the vehicle. But what was so disheartening to me, and it still, as a mom, stands out to me to this day, because there's those moments, I'm sorry, a little hair in my eye, to this day, is that she left with my son to take him to school, to get him out of this crazy situation, even if he's a little early. But the last image that my son had of me, because it's the last I had of him at that time, was me lying helpless on the porch while people helped my husband get me to the car. And it haunted me all the way to the hospital, despite the pain and everything. And it's still something that I feel some kind of way about, even though I couldn't help it to this day, that my child had that image of his mommy. And so we're going and we're getting to the hospital, and I remember the pain and I remember the ride. And I remember getting to the hospital and him barely getting me to the hallway and slumped against a wall as they get a wheelchair and take me back to the table. And there's nurses all around me, and nurses run the world. We know that. At least in the hospitals we do, and I've been blessed to have some great ones. And I remember my stomach being in a strange place. Like, why is this baby so high? Why is he right under my breast? Why is he here? And I can't, there's times in your life where you can't believe you remember every detail, but you do. And I know that somehow my little one was trying to tell me something that I couldn't process. And I hear the nurses saying, okay, we need to figure out what's going on. Let's get her on the machines, and we need to prep her. We need to do this. But I remember this one nurse, my hero, this one nurse who literally yelled at everybody in the room, because I could hear her voice ringing in my ears. And she said, forget all of that. Get her off the machines, call the doctor, and get her down the hall. I don't care what anybody says. This baby is coming out now. You get a doctor down there and you all get it figured out. Forget all of the machines. The machines are going to scream if you get her on them. And a doctor comes in and I can't remember his exact words, but let's face it was what she said. And they thrust papers at me, at my husband, whatever. They're giving him, and he's not knowing what to sign. And I just know I'm heading into another surgery. And I had a cesarean with my first one. So it's like, okay, but you know that this is different. And I know that my son, who we already knew his name, we already knew he was Jared, was trying to tell me something. But what? There was some mommy he's crying out to tell me. But what? And the next thing I know, I'm in the operating room and I hear all the hustle and bustle around me. And there is panic. There is panic in everybody's voices. And the the anesthetist is trying to take me out. And I remember the doctor saying, just do it quick. I don't care if you got to do it the old fashioned way. You get her out right now. She's got to be out. And I remember all the instruments. I'm hearing the metal against metal, and I'm hearing all the instruments. And within moments of feeling the doctor touch me and the pain being so extreme, it may have just been pain I was already in. I don't know. But I'm I'm hearing these noises, but I still know my little one is trying to tell me something. And in that moment, it all goes black. And I know it wasn't black for long because of everything that happened afterwards. But in that moment, it all went black. And little did I know that so much of my world was going to also fade to black at that moment. Little did I know at that moment that it wasn't just someone fighting for my life, but it was everyone. Everyone. It was an army. What seemed like an army, I'm sure, to a baby, fighting for Jared's life as well, and fighting for the precious moments that we were able to have with him in the weeks and months after. But there is so much to the starting after, even in that moment when it faded to black, and so much more to that moment in this story, and so many more moments of mine, of other people, of things that we'll be talking about, things we'll be analyzing, things that we will talk about with faith, having it, not having it, struggling with it, mental health, a battle that so many of us deal with every day to sustain in a positive direction. We're going to be frank and honest about those things, and oh, the joy, because there is that, even between all the other things. So it's not, oh my gosh, oh, the tragedy of it all, the trauma, what is she giving us? What is this show? No, that's an example of one of those starting after moments that started after in this journey for me in such a spectacularly scary way that set me off on a journey that is still evolving with lessons that are still being learned and so much more that we're going to cover and uncover, and steps to be taken, steps that worked, some not so much, all of those things on starting after. This was part one. I hope that you will be back for episode 1, part 2, as we continue my story with Jared and so much more. So I am thanking you in advance. I am thanking you for joining me on this journey of my autobiography with me, and hopefully the journeys of so many others, including some of you who may be listening or watching saying, I need to be sitting there with her too, on starting after. Good night.